Hello and welcome to UC Today. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Garth from Theta Lake. Thanks for joining us today, Garth. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having us on, Tom.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. We're going to be talking about a really interesting topic today, which is compliance with a particular customer experience angle. But to start with, I wonder if you could give us a quick introduction and tell us a bit about Theta Lake and your role there.
Yeah, so Theta Lake provides compliance and security for today's modern communications, which includes all of the unified communication platforms today across all of the different modalities, whether it's textual, things like chat, voice, video, whiteboards, as well as enterprise social, and then, of course, what we're talking about today, contact center applications, which are very much tied to the UC market. My role at Theta Lake is I'm responsible for product marketing. So in terms of our external communications and positioning and messaging and internal sales enablement, those are the things I focused on, as well as analyst relations.
That's great. And it's a really interesting time to be covering this space, particularly in the contact center. So let's move on to kind of the core of the conversation. I want to start with quite a high level question. I wonder if you can talk us through what you're seeing in terms of compliance and security in the call center at the moment, what the trends and the challenges that organizations are facing.
Yeah, great question. And I think it's important just to sort of set the stage and talk about where contact centers as a service are today. Much like unified communications, contact centers as a service, have really traversed that on-premise sort of legacy telephony environment to modern communications in the cloud across all of the different modalities. So you hear the term omnichannel quite a bit, across all of those different modalities. And some of the things that we're seeing with contact centers are, much like the way we work today in a hybrid environment, but a very decentralized environment, a lot of work from home call centers. We're not physically bound to our desks with contact centers. And so customer service agents and representatives can work from home, leverage those contact centers, engage in, the customer experience across all of those different modalities. And of course, with the focus on retention and minimizing churn and providing a superior customer experience aspect. When you start to see the trends around security and compliance in those environments, a few things we've already talked about come into focus. One is that they're decentralized and there's, more of a loosening of where people work. So, of course, we're talking about human beings. And so humans are prone to mistakes, right? Things like sharing your desktop, right, during a call like today. It could have payment card information. It could have personally identifiable information. And of course, if you're a organization, you're subject to regulatory requirements. Payment card information is pretty much a universal one, right? We've always got to safeguard that. And the other thing that's happening here in these environments, they're generating just a tremendous amount of content, right? So all of the aforementioned modalities, voice, video, textual communications, sharing your desktop, everything that involves, your language, all of those things that involves is the very rich customer experience. They are, of course, a target-rich environment for all sorts of things outside of human error, right? We start to think of malfeasance. You may have an insider threat problem where an employee would be willing to engage and share data, for a fee, or is acting in an otherwise malicious manner. In addition, that information is, in flight and at rest. So as it sits there, it can be unguarded, unsecured, and of course, a very attractive opportunity for data breaches. So you see that aspect as well. And so, you see all of that, and organizations are faced with a lot, right? They're always looking at really top-line revenue-generating opportunities, and superior customer service goes a long way towards that. And these security and compliance issues, they're not afterthoughts or later considerations, but they're significant hurdles to overcome so that you can achieve those revenue and customer retention goals.
I think it's interesting to think of security and compliance because it's easy to see it as something that you have to stop something bad happening. But I wonder if you could talk through how it could tie into the overall goals of a call center, which ultimately is to deliver a good customer experience.
Yeah, great question, Tom. So when we look at contact centers, they're very much contact center as a service. We look at platforms like those from Zoom and RingCentral. And they're very much like those virtual meeting platforms in the UCaaS space, where they're feature rich. You have functionality that, if you're looking at this from a security and compliance lens, if you're a CISO, if you're a compliance officer, if you're in the data center responsible for carrying out those policies, you may consider turning off and restricting those functionalities, turning off whiteboards, turning off screen sharing, if it's a remote employee or some other restriction. So as a result, a few things come into play. You could be paying for features that you're not leveraging. You could be really, and as a result, minimizing the return on investment that you've made in those contact centers. By the way, our friends at Metrigy point out that increasingly, organizations are tying those contact center decisions to their platform of choice for unified communications. So I believe it's some 43%, 44% are starting to streamline and consolidate and make those decisions around contact centers in line with unified communication platforms. But restricting that functionality, turning it off, not fully maximizing the return on investment, also can lead to not using your contact center as a competitive differentiator, right? If you're a consumer, if you are engaging in customer service, filing a complaint, looking to inquire about purchase options, customer service is a powerful differentiator. We all think about those people we're okay calling up and working with. If you're not able to leverage functionality, and one of those is video, for example, there's a lot of research out there that says engaging in direct video face-to-face conversation with a customer service agent leads to better engagement and better outcomes. If you're not maximizing experiences like that, well, then you're missing out. And compliance and security, being able to implement those things so that you can fully maximize functionality, have an enriched customer experience, means that it's a means to an end. It doesn't have to just be about a checkbox. It doesn't have to be about a hurdle to overcome. But instead, I think where your question was going, it's really a business enabler.
I think that's a nice point to bring in the Theta Lake technology. Could you talk through what you're doing, particularly around call centers, to help organizations sort of combat some of these challenges, but also ultimately help them achieve their end goal of delivering a great customer service?
Yeah, thank you. So at Theta Lake, our whole thesis and MO and everything we're built around begins with the seamless integration with today's modern communications. So when you talk about Zoom, we support Zoom across all of their platforms. And there isn't a compliance and security solution that supports Zoom across all of the modalities, all of the use cases, all of the features like Theta Lake. And that extends, beginning to start with contact center, we've begun with voice support. So that seamless integration means that from a IT standpoint, from a time to value, from a deployment standpoint, we're working directly with the API. And that means that we can directly capture those rich communications like voice in the case of Zoom Contact Center, with NICE and CXone and RingCentral and those contact centers. We can capture not only voice but also video communications. And by capturing those recordings in their entirety, you can do a few things. For one, now you've secured the data. We talked about data breaches. We talked about unauthorized access. You're putting those controls around there, and that data can now be encrypted as well using your own encryption keys or ours. You can leverage our storage environment, our archive environment, with your choices of AWS or Azure. and those are both, SOC 2 and SEC 17A4 validated, or we can use your storage and archive environment. So, we've captured the data, we've secured it, and we've put those controls in place around access and usage. In addition, we have some really powerful governance applications. So, many organizations are looking at these rich communications in contact center conversations and saying, here's an opportunity for workforce conduct management. We want to review a call, review an interaction, and say, is that the language? Is that the brand? Is that the way we want our agents to present themselves? We use machine learning and natural language processing with out-of-the-box classifications that give you the ability to detect all sorts of behaviors, whether it's language violations, whether it's, something related to data leakage, any sort of, particular malfeasance or risk. We are able to detect that and surface it in a way that's automated. So those review teams, aren't manually pouring through a conversation like this, looking through hours of video. They're able to surface that risk, detect it, and then figure out if there's an opportunity for remediation, simply getting rid of, deleting that data, redacting it. For example, if there's any sort of payment card information or PII, we have the ability to redact that or remediate it as well. So, in summary, it's across the entire life cycle. Begins with the capture, preserving it in its native format, fidelity, and context, securing it and storing it and preserving it for record keeping purposes, and then the ability to review and surface and identify potential risks and malfeasance or errors, that type of behavior.
Yeah, so it's clear you can do a lot for organisations, and I'm sure you probably could have gone on a lot longer with some of the other features that you can.
Hopefully not for our listeners.
I'd be interested to know why you think there are potentially gaps in an organisation's compliance, particularly in highly regulated markets where presumably they're aware of the requirements.
Yeah. So, in regulated organizations, there's no secret around this. It comes down to the challenge, right? All of us, regulated organizations included, don't have the opportunity to sort of rewire and reconstruct and redesign business processes like customer service and engagement, or, if you're a financial service, your banking and trading environment. We're not going to rewire, rebuild, and reconstruct that for security and compliance. So, trying to fit in and make those new processes work would be challenging. You combine that with, the enormous volumes of data that today's organization is encountering, right? When we talk about voice, when we talk about video, when we talk about textual and Q&A and polling and surveys and all of those things and whiteboards, we're just accumulating exponential amounts of data. So for a regulated organization or anyone else, that can seem to be overwhelming. So it's almost like inertia takes place. And I talked about that sort of feature restriction and turning off and, restricting capabilities. It's a means to an end. We're seeing with our research that regulated organizations have responded to all of the fines and sanctions that have taken place in the last 2 years with, mobile communications usage by really ratcheting that up and turning off features increasingly more. They're just, they're not able to sort of redesign and introduce new technologies to their regulatory compliance technology infrastructure, and they're overwhelmed with the data. So what do we do differently? I alluded to a little bit of it before. First of all, we capture all those communications, so you don't have to worry about that. We preserve their context and fidelity. But, we also sit inside and work in a frictionless way with your existing infrastructure, whether it's storage, archives, e-discovery applications, and so forth, so that you can use that data, capture it, make use of it, but at the same time do it in a really impactful, fast time to value way that suits those goals.
Great. I've just got one final question for you, Garth. I wonder if you could talk through some of the trends that you expect to be particularly important around call center compliance over the coming months, and then just give our watchers an understanding of where they can find out a bit more about Theta Lake.
Well, one of those trends is definitely happening already, right? It's not a secret, and that's generative AI, because many of our contact centers today are starting to incorporate generative AI in terms of, chatbots, customer interactions, supplying feedback, supplying answers to common customer queries. And, that's one that organizations there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about that, right? As much as there's the adoption, there's also the concern that it's not going to work, that based on the bad data that it may be consuming or inferencing, that we're going to get bad outputs as well. And that, certainly we've seen that at the consumer level. We've seen that in many high profile news stories. And as I said, we're just involved in that sort of FUD right now, right? So there's that concern. But it's really an opportunity for contact centers to really, ratchet up the engagement and provide fast time to value of their own in terms of answering those queries. And then also doing more with less, right? Redeploying, reallocating human resources so that they're doing and engaging in more meaningful, productive activities, and automating a lot of the contact center. So that's certainly one big trend. I think the omnichannel aspect of customer engagement, will just continue to grow, whether it's mobile communications, incorporation of SMS, incorporation of, your messaging applications, whether it's WhatsApp, incorporating, more and more video, all of the things that we're seeing in today's workplace with unified communications are a good example of what we expect to see with contact centers. And I think buyers are indicating that with the decisions they're making and honing in on key platforms that offer superior contact center offerings.
Great. Just a final bit I tagged on the end there. Tell us where our audience can find out a bit more about Theta Lake.
Yeah, thank you. So you can always come to thetalake.com, and we've got a very powerful website that will show you all of the integrations that we have. You can ask for a demo there. You can tune into our weekly demo series to see how Theta Lake works. There's a number of resource briefs and solution briefs and videos that provide those, the data you're looking for, as well as, those videos for demos also.
Great. Garth, it's been great talking to you, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon, particularly, as you said, as generative AI really takes off. So hopefully we'll catch up in a few months. But in the meantime, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a share on social media, and we'll see you next time.